Derby County striker James Collins looks set to be leaving the club in this January transfer window, with a whole host of League One clubs rumoured to be interested. James Collins has had a really impressive time at Derby County, helping them go from administration all the way back to the Championship. Ultimately, this season we've seen that he's not quite up to that Championship level anymore, but will he be able to find himself a move back down into League One where he can go and score goals and build his confidence yet again? There are a number of clubs interested, most notably Rotherham and Leyton Orient, but we also have some murmurs that Bolton Wanderers may potentially be interested. The initial link comes from Peter Rook. Rotherham and Leyton Orient are among a number of clubs eyeing moves for Derby striker James Collins this month. Derby could let Collins move as he in the final 6 months of his contract at Pride Park. Now, for me, I think this is absolutely the right thing for Derby County to do. I think it's the right thing for both James Collins and for Derby County. We've obviously recently announced the signing of Lars Jørgen Salverson for around £800,000, and he is essentially going to take over that mantle from James Collins. Now, obviously, Derby County could keep James Collins in the building and allow Dajaune Brown to move out on loan, but ultimately we've got to be very careful with how we deal with things. I assume James Collins is probably a little bit further down the pecking order than Dajaune Brown, given that when we played Leyton Orient in midweek, it was Dajaune Brown that got the nod to start the game, and James Collins was sat on the bench. Ultimately, I think it sort of speaks a little bit towards the pecking order at the moment. You obviously still have Connor Washington at Derby County as well, who in my opinion isn't ever going to be around first team until the end of his contract. So obviously there's potential talks around Washington moving on as well, but for me, James Collins has had some incredible moments for Derby County. He scored some really nice goals. He scored some really important goals as well. We go back to, I think it was Carlisle. He scored the second goal in that game, and there's obviously some big goals along the way as well. And obviously, for me, I think James Collins has been a model professional for Derby County. I think if he does move on, I think we have to give him credit for the fact that there's never been any public outcry. Even in the first season, when Didsey took his spot and he was sitting on the bench for the majority of the season, he didn't complain, he didn't cause a fuss, he didn't have a go at Warren, he didn't complain in the press or anything like that. He just got on with his football, he trained, he worked, he played, and when he played, he did okay. Now, I personally, I've never really been a massive fan of James Collins. I think ultimately the way it started at Derby County was very difficult for him. I think it took him a while to score his first goal, and then he didn't score again for a while, but he did score a large amount of goals for Derby County, and some really important ones. I think last season it was 18 in all competitions, including 12 in the league, and it's one of those for me where I just think James Collins has a lot to give to someone, but ultimately not to Derby County. And obviously that start to life with James Collins, where he couldn't hit a barn door, couldn't finish his dinner. I ultimately think it cost Liam Rosenior his job, because if James Collins could have finished his chances, then would have been in those playoff places, pushing for automatic promotion. And I don't think at that point David Clowes would have looked towards getting rid of Rosenior and bringing in Paul Warne. But it's just one of those things. This is football. It happens. As you know, right now, Derby County are going through a bit of a dry spell when it comes to wins and points. I made a video back in November talking about a potential getting ourselves in and around that sort of playoff conversation. Not that we'd ever finish there this season, but sort of we were in that position where we played all the teams around us, and if we could get good results, we'd have been in and around it. And since then, we've won only, I think it's 2 games, West Brom, and there's one other one in there that we've won as well. But it's very difficult. It's very disappointing, because losing a player like James Collins, who is a model professional, is very true to himself, he's very honest, and he really wears his heart on his sleeve and works really hard for the badge. I think it's one of those where you have to make sure that obviously Salverson, who's coming in, can do the same things. Now, I think Salverson is going to be a better striker long term for Derby County. Can do all the same things as Collins. We've seen his highlight package in the video where I spoke about the transfer a couple of days ago really, which was one of my most viewed videos on the channel. So I appreciate all of your support on that one, and obviously the jump up now to 1,500 subscribers. Absolutely impressed with that. I'm really excited to see where this goes, but I think Salverson certainly push Derby to another level by removing James Collins. Obviously, for me, I'd prefer to have got rid of Washington first, but I don't mind Collins moving on. And obviously, you talk about Rotherham, Steve Evans. They've not really had the greatest of seasons. Obviously, it started in a really bad way for Rotherham. Obviously, you've got Leyton, Orient, who we played just a couple of days ago. They're in some unbelievable form over recent weeks and have got themselves from, I think they lost their first 4 or 5 games and they're now well within the promotion picture in League One. You've then got Bolton as well. They've just got rid of Dion Charles, obviously not by choice, but it's one of those for me where I certainly believe that Derby County can go from strength to strength with this. But with letting Collins go, you've then got to have the conversation of what are we doing with Barkhazen, what are we doing with Blackett Taylor, and what are we doing with Connor Washington? 3 players who I believe are sort of... I love Blackett Taylor. I think if he played every week, I think we'd have absolutely no problems, nothing to worry about, nothing to cry about. But they just don't give him the opportunity. Paul Warne doesn't. And it's disappointing to see how it's going and things like that. But for me, there's a lot more that Derby County can do with Blackett Taylor. Tom Barkhazen and Connor Washington, I think, are in the same boat as James Collins. Ultimately, only really get in the team when there's injuries and problems. Washington, I don't think, has been in a matchday squad since the first game of the season at Blackburn. And that was because we didn't have enough players because of injuries and things, with like Jake Rooney had gone down and things like that. You obviously then go on to letting those players go and how are we going to replace them. We've already heard that Paul Warne is after advanced midfielder and a winger. Now I think Harvey Nibbs ticks both of them boxes, so it wouldn't surprise me if that deal was Harvey Nibbs coming in to take that essentially the Marcus Harness role, where he can play through the middle and out wide. Now I think Harness is better on the right or the left. I think he's one of our better wide players. So I think it would open the door to move him over, which would then allow Barkhazen to move on. You go into midfield, and I sort of still think we're missing another technical-minded player that's similar to Ibu, who can win your tackles and things like that. Now, there's obviously a lot for Paul Warne and Derby County to do over the course of the last week or so of this transfer window. I'm recording this on the 18th of January. We play Watford later today, which we'll talk about in a video that will have been posted yesterday. So make sure you go and check that out if you haven't done so already. But Derby County are in a major position right now where letting go of James Collins opens up the door to more wages and things like that. I ultimately don't believe he should have been given a contract. I think I spoke about it in the summer. I felt as if we needed to move on from him, but ultimately it felt as if he was given a contract just to fulfill squad slots, essentially, to make sure we had players that are available. And it felt as if Paul Warne didn't think we'd be able to get another striker through the door. Now, the big question with it is how are Derby County going to deal with it in the short term? We've got Selverson who's come in. He'll obviously probably be on the bench today. I'm not entirely sure. I know there's been some talk about him not exactly being fit because the Norwegian League finishes at around the start of December. So I'm unsure whether he'll actually be on the bench today, but check out my matchday vlog. You'll know all about it. We'll talk about it. You've then got Dajaune Brown, who I think has shown time and time again that he's capable of playing at this level. His goal versus Leyton Orient shows exactly what you need in a striker, getting in between those posts and staying there, and ultimately you will score goals. Dajaune Brown is an excellent finisher, and we've seen that time and time again. Jerry Yates, a player who I'd love Derby County to sign permanently. Can't personally see it happening, but I certainly believe that Derby County can go from strength to strength now with the introduction of Selverson, and you could potentially play a little and large in a 3-5-2 with Selverson and Yates side by side, or Selverson and Brown, depending on the situation in the team we're up against. Now, obviously, if you have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell. Hit the like button as well to stay tuned to all of my latest content. Go and follow me over on TikTok. Check out my racing channel as well, Lewis Talk Racing, on all platforms, and I'll catch you in my next video.